Everywhere in the world this law is seen working out its inexorable certainty. Empires built by might are dissolving. Rich world treasuries are disgorging their gold and piling up debt. The blood of every man killed by the sword has been paid for by 10, perchance 10 times 10, of those who killed. Nations which have fattened on the food taken from others are starving amid the ruins of palaces in which they feasted. A new world, one world, cannot grow out of a universe built on the foundations of hate and fear by unbalanced taking. A new world must have new foundations. An eternal foundation is not built on one whole. It is built lovingly, stone by stone. Thus must man rebuild his world. Once again, I read the law of love that our Father has given as a foundation to bring everlasting peace to his world of man. Rhythmic, balanced interchange. Okay, and now I begin another lecture entitled The Meaning of Universal Oneness. And it starts with this. Everything that is of every other thing that is. All things in my universe are indissolubly united as one. When we speak of oneness, our universality, our unity, are the one thing of scientific terminology. I doubt if 1 in 1,000 has the slightest idea of what those terms really mean. We are so accustomed to multiplicity of units of every conceivable kind in nature that separateness and separability are fixed concepts in our thinking. Also, our own individuality is of so many human individuals makes it well nigh impossible to think of mankind as one man inseparable from other men. It is still more impossible to think of the whole universe as one thing with not one separable part. Nevertheless, it is true of God's universe that there are not two separate or separable things in it. Likewise, it is true that there are not two individual human bodies or two individual human souls in the vast entirety of this universe. It is difficult to look into the starry heavens and think of all those millions of stars as one star. Yet they are all so indissolubly bound together that any action or variation upon one is as much a part of every other one as any happening anywhere happens everywhere. Everybody who is familiar with radio knows that a voice sounding in England can be recondensed into sound anywhere on the planet, but few realize that every such sound is universal in its extent, reaching to the furthermost star with as much certainty and precision as to the next city from its point of utterance. The growing comprehension of this electric age makes it possible for moderns to understand that principle of universality which, except for a few mystics, the ancients could not comprehend. These few did understand it, however, for their illumination into cosmic awareness gave them that all-knowing. To them alone, God's processes of creation are fully known. Such knowledge can never come through the senses until inspiration unfolds in man to a sufficient extent to enable him to see and hear with the eyes and the ears of the Spirit within him what he sees and hears with the eyes and ears of the Spirit. I said that wrong. Let me say it again. Such knowledge can never come through the senses until inspiration unfolds in man to a sufficient extent to enable him to see and hear with the eyes and the ears of the Spirit within him what he sees and hears with the eyes and ears of his body. When inspired man can interpret the effects recorded upon his senses into the cause of those effects, then he comprehends the omnipotence, omnipresence, and omnipotence of God. He then has knowledge, but not until. The more we know how God's thinking processes take God's knowing of his one idea apart, give it form and body with seeming multiplicity, separability, and individuality, then void all of those qualities by merging them into the oneness from which they came for the purpose of repeating them eternally, the more we can understand that God alone is, that every point in the universe is the same point, that every extension from any one point is as though there were but one dimensionless point in all the universe. Consider the oneness of any part of God's ideal, such as the calm ocean, its unchanging stillness unbroken by waves of motion, which seemingly divided into many measurable units, might be likened to the stillness of the one light of God's unchanging knowing, unbroken by the thinking of that knowing into many seemingly changing and measurable parts. Upon that calm ocean there are no separate or separable units to give multiplicity or individuality to its oneness. There is nothing there which changes, nothing to measure. One could not put his finger anywhere upon it and return to locate that same point, for every point upon it anywhere is the same point. There is no everywhere in it, for there is no extension in it, nothing that is relative to any other thing, for there is no other thing in the ocean's oneness for it to be relative to. The ocean can be relative to the shore, for that is another ideal, but the oneness of one ideal cannot be relative to itself. The moment the still balance of the ocean becomes extended to two unbalanced opposite conditions, the unchanging oneness becomes a changing multiplicity. The unity of the ocean ideal is divided into wave units of that ideal. Separateness and separability come into seeming being when one can count oneness into infinity, where the measureless can be measured, where variation from oneness gives individuality to varying and changing units. Wherever unity is manifested by infinite numbers of units, no two of those units are alike. Likewise, where one balanced equal pressure is divided into two opposite unbalanced pressures, motion becomes imperative for the purpose of seeking balance. The import of this is the fact that all divisibility and multiplicity, all individuality, changing, measure, unbalance, and disunity, come from oneness, from unity itself. Furthermore, all of these qualities of separateness return to the oneness from which they came, for the purpose of again expressing their separateness in infinite numbers of forever changing units. That fact of the division and multiplication of the unity of God's knowing into the infinity of God's thinking, for taking his one ideal part and expressing it as many parts, then putting all those parts together again into the unity from which they came, is the one dominant characteristic of creation. That is what creation is, many changing units of moving light waves, arising from the stillness of the one light, then returning to that stillness for rebirth into light waves of motion. Consider another phase of separateness, changing, individuality, and measurableness, arising from the same ocean ideal as mist and vapors instead of waves. The love principle of nature is manifested by the giving of ocean to the heavens and the re-giving of an equal amount by the heavens to the earth. Multiplicity, separateness, individuality, and the variation of changing are manifested in the countless units of cloud forms, raindrops, brooks, creeks, rivers, waterfalls, torrents, and other forms which manifest the ideal of water when set in motion as an infinity of units. Consider the individuality of brooks and rivers and streams. Each has its separate form, no two are alike. Their individuality is named by men as Stony Creek, North Mountain Brook, Hudson River, or Niagara Falls. The forms of each unit of water thus divided from its oneness are as different from each other as every man is different from each other.